Rob, we're talking to you today because obviously the testing station has been set up just a few hundred yards away from where we are now. Why was this done? Why was it seen so vitally necessary to open up a testing station in Newark?
Well, the town has been blessed with a relatively low number of cases thus far in the pandemic, but in the last week or two we've seen a concerning spike. A number of those, as has been widely reported, have been linked to one employer, Backover, on the industrial estate. And so Notts County Council, the District Council and Public Health England are putting more resources into the town so that more people can get themselves tested more easily. The mobile testing unit now at the council office is available to anyone with symptoms from within or around the town who wants to come along. They'll need to book online to secure their appointment, but it'll be here all of the week. And at Backover, which has been the employer with the largest number of cases, there's now going to be workforce testing, both for those people who have symptoms and the asymptomatic. And so we'll learn in the coming days as the results of those tests come through whether there's something that we need to be more concerned about in the town and whether we need to take more decisive action to protect people.
Yeah. You mentioned people who are asymptomatic, which means they've got it, but they don't know they've got it. And this part of the problem with the current testing is that you've got to feel unwell to book an appointment to go and get tested, whereas, for instance, I could be asymptomatic, breathing all over you now, and just don't know it. So surely the idea should be that everybody should be tested.
Well, the resources that we have are being prioritised for those people who've got symptoms, and so that's why the testing unit that's here at the moment will be for the symptomatic. But as I say, at Backover, they're going to be testing everybody in the whole workforce so that you get a real understanding of how many people might have the virus. What we could all do in our daily lives is continue to follow the guidance, washing our hands, staying socially distant, and trying to ensure there's not too much interaction between different households. And so you and I are stood at least a metre apart from each other.
Agree.
Conducting this interview, and although of course the weather is wonderful, lots of people are getting back out, and rightly so, enjoying all the pubs and the restaurants and cafes in and around Newark. Just remember to follow those simple rules whilst you're doing that, and that will help to keep the rate of transmission to a manageable level in and around the town.
And I agree, they are simple rules, 1+ metre or 2 metres and so on. But the trouble is, you and I are both acknowledging the fact that people are not sticking to those rules, and that's the distressing thing. It's almost as if, well, I don't know anybody that's got it, so I'm all right. Is there any other way of getting that message across to people to be more thoughtful, not just about themselves, but about those around them?
Well, we all need to take it seriously ourselves, talk to our family and friends, talk to younger people who, of course, they themselves may be at very low risk of getting unwell, certainly extremely low risk of dying as a result of the virus, but they can transmit it to others. So ensuring that these messages spread around the town will be very helpful. If we don't get this under control, then you've seen the sort of decisive action that local councils and the government have had to take elsewhere in the country, including not so far away in Leicester. We don't want to see that happen in Newark, because we're just getting things reopening in the town, and so many jobs depend upon the hospitality sector and other businesses being able to trade again, broadly speaking, as normal. And so we don't want to be in a position of having to have that. But that's the sort of action that will follow if the rate of infection rises concerningly in the town.
Well, I can appreciate that, and the local economy no doubt would suffer hugely from it, because, as I say, the pubs have just started to open and so on. But there's also a degree of personal responsibility that folks may take. I mean, there was only a report, was it 2 weeks ago, where somebody was trying to get into a local pub in town, frustratingly couldn't, and decided to take it out on the bouncer and glassed him. Now, I just wonder, is there any provision for making sure that individuals who behave like that the full rigour of the law is applied?
Well, I hope it is.
Yes.
And I've been speaking to Heather Sutton, and the local police force, and they're taking these issues seriously. There is more active policing. I've seen that, and also the police engaging with people who, like young people, for example, who are hanging out around the river at Farndon or the lake at Balderton, places where understandably people want to gather in good weather, making sure that they're following the rules as carefully as they can. One of the lessons we have heard from the employers that have seen a rise in the rate of infection has been around car sharing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that we can all pay heed to. If you do get to work by sharing a car with others and there's no alternative because you can't walk or cycle or you don't have your own car to get to work, then wear a mask in the vehicle, wipe down those parts of the car that you're all touching, like the handle or the stereo or the steering wheel, afterwards. And then if you go for a drink after work, please be careful that you're not spreading the virus with your colleagues there by staying socially distant, and so on. That seems to be one of the best things that we could all do, particularly people who work in factories like Bakover in the days and weeks ahead. Yeah,
well, you mentioned Bakover a couple of times, and I appreciate that they have got a particular problem that was very well publicised last week. But are there any other big employers in town that ought to be doing the same sort of thing, testing on site, as it were, to make sure that their people are not carrying the germ or the bacteria?
Well, Bakover are the only employer that I'm aware of so far where there's known to be a significant number of cases. I've spoken to the company and they're taking a number of steps, trying to communicate with the workforce in multiple languages, for example, ensuring that there's socially distancing within the building, ensuring that staff are wearing masks or visors, that there's good hand sanitation and thorough cleaning of the building. But those sorts of steps and that communication with the workforce should be being followed by other employers throughout the town. Obviously, no employer wants to end up in a similar position. And so I would really encourage them to follow that guidance, and if they've got any concerns, to reach out either to Newark and Sherwood or to Notts County Council, who are advising them and providing advice in multiple languages that's very accessible to people so that they can take similar steps.
Can I just take you a few weeks into the future? Because I'm a school governor at 2 schools and obviously very concerned about the government's pronouncement about schools must open, and I don't disagree with that. I think that we really need to start socialising our children again and educating our children again. But how can we be absolutely sure and as safe as we can be? And I realise it's not an absolute thing that you can guarantee, but how can we manage that for the schools to ensure that both the children and the staff are as safe as possible when schools reopen in September?
Well, the first thing to say is we've got to try to do this. This has to be our priority. The Prime Minister said it's his priority. I think it should be our local priority as well, because there's no substitute for having children in a classroom with teachers, having face-to-face contact, and the discipline and the routine that comes with that as well. As a parent, I've seen huge efforts from teachers to do remote learning, and with some success, but there's no substitute for getting back to school. I think it is safe. The advice that the government has received from Public Health England suggests that there's very little evidence of transmission in the classroom or to teachers. Fortunately, very few cases seem to have emerged that are directly attributable to being at school. And of course, schools have been open, albeit with relatively small numbers of pupils throughout the pandemic. And so there is evidence upon which we can judge these decisions. The government's given thorough guidance to schools, and I've spoken to all of our local secondary school head teachers in the last week or so, and although it's not been easy, and I'm very grateful for their hard work, they have now put in place plans for September that they think are sufficiently rigorous, using different entrances, in some cases considering staggered starting times, having bubbles to protect students, and making arrangements. And each of our secondary schools certainly believe that it's safe to do so, and I hope primary schools as well. It's a real priority, and I hope that parents will support teachers and ensure that their children do go back to school in September.
Robert, thanks very much for your time. Accept this virtual handshake because I'm not allowed to shake your hand, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.